All right, you'll let me know 10 minutes, a quarter to, or whatever. Okay. All right. The Lag Bomer is shrouded in mystery. I mean, I did not go to a Hasidic yeshiva as a boy, and because of that, while we celebrated Lag Bomer, we had a half a day of school. But none of the teachers ever explained to us what Lag Bomer was all about. And but when you look into the Svarim, many reasons are given for Lag Bomer. The Chassam Sofer gives a very strange reason. The Chassam Sofer suggests, and there are some discrepancies with the way the Gemara mentions it. It's certainly right around that period of time. The Chassam Sofer suggests that the holiday of Lag Bomer was to commemorate the giving of the mun. Because after a month, after the Jews left Egypt, they ran out of the matzah that they made, and they were starving for food, as the Torah tells us in the Shalach. And for some reason, he suggests that it was on Lag Bomer that the mun came down. However, the Miri in Yavamis, he mentions in the name of the Gonim that the reason for Lag Bomer is because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. The Gemara in Yavamis tells us that the students of Rabbi Akiva died. He had 12,000 pair of students. It's a question. Why did he say pair? Why didn't he just say 24,000? But he had 24,000 of students, and they all died between Pesach and Shavuos from Askara, which is a very painful death, Askara. And there are different theories as to what Askara is, but it seems more and more people consider Askara to be diphtheria. So they died. The Gemara says between Pesach and Shavuos. However, there is a text in the Medrash that says that they stopped dying, or the last day they died. There are all kinds of different versions. Was on Lag Bomer. So the Miri says that the Gonim said that that's the reason for the holiday of Lag Bomer. Now, it's very strange, this statement of the Miri, because that the holiday was to commemorate the fact that they stopped dying, because they stopped dying because they were all dead. So what are we celebrating? That there was no one else. There was no one else left to die. So what are we celebrating? So I think the way we could understand it is, and this is very often the case in Jewish tradition. Jewish tradition places a big focus on re-experiencing. In other words, we take ourselves and put ourselves in a different situation, in a different time. Of course, the main example of that is Pesach. Chayav adam liros esatzmo. Kilu yatsa mishiva mitzrayim. A person has to see himself as if he just went out of Egypt. That's the reason we lean Pesach at night. That's the reason we drink the 4 kosos, the 4 cups of wine. But, and the reverse, we, Tisha B'Av, we sit on the floor. It's as if the Beis HaMikdash is burning in front of us. So re-experiencing plays a major role in halacha and in our practices. Now, the idea here is we're not so much that it's not a celebration, I think, that they stopped dying. Of course, there was no one else left to die, but I think the reason is because we are re-undergoing that experience and knowing that day after day, more students of Rabbi Akiva who represented the linkage of the passing of Torah from one generation to another is dying. The Jewish people couldn't go on. So what we were celebrating after they finished dying, people very often fall into a depression. And it's not easy to come out of a depression. And to a certain degree, those who had a focus on Mesoras HaTorah, on the giving of the Torah, while the students of Rabbi Akiva were dying, they were scared regarding the Mesorah, the giving over the Torah from generation to generation. How is it going to be given over? And they were overcome with tragedy. What we're celebrating, I think, is that afterwards we were able to, in a sense, exit from this sense of depression and to be able to move on and to contribute to the giving, to the continuation of the Mesorah. So there are those, however, interestingly, that suggest, and there is a certain basis in the Errs Rav Shira Gaon. The Errs Rav Shira Gaon seems to have had a different text in the Gemara, whereas our Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim died from Astra, diphtheria. The Errs Rav Shira Gaon says they died bishmada. Shmad is usually talks about religious oppression. When the nations of the world force us to give up our observance of the Torah. When they force us to give up our Jewish identity. So they died bishmada, which would imply they died al Kiddush Hashem in sanctification of God's name, because they were determined not to give in to the religious demands of the Romans. It is suggested that the Rav Shira Gaon might have had a different text. I'm wondering whether Askara, because it was considered the most painful death possible, as the Gemara in Brachas tells us, did not become a terminology for a painful death. It's possible that the students of Rabbi Akiva, according to the Errs Rav Shira Gaon, were tortured because of their commitment to the Torah. But there are those who suggest, there are historians that suggest, and there are those on the basis of Rav Shira Gaon that even in the religious circles, that the students of Rabbi Akiva who died really died because they were members of Bar Kokhba's army. It's well known that Bar Kokhba led a rebellion against Rome, and it's well known, and the Rambam even mentions it, that Rabbi Akiva was his main supporter. In fact, the Rambam says that Rabbi Akiva was the arms bearer of Bar Kokhba. He held Bar Kokhba's arms, his weapons bearer. And the question is, Bar Kokhba couldn't get somebody else to hold his weapons. But obviously, and Rabbi Akiva at that time was already an elderly person. But it was a sign of support. It was a sign that he saw himself in the battle together with Bar Kokhba. And then there is some suggest there are some who suggest that it's the suggestion that it was because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. Because it was the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. I just mentioned also, it's also brought down based on something in Josephus that Lag BaOmer was the day in which Bar Kokhba announced his revolt against the Romans. So, but whatever it was, there is a question because the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah and the Gemara in Tainus to a certain degree discusses all the holidays that existed during the second Beis HaMikdash. During the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, every time there was an event that was noteworthy, whether it was an event of salvation or was a spiritual victory, they would declare that day as a holiday. And for future years. And all these holidays were written down in a book called the Megillas Tainus, in a scroll called the Megillas Tainus. And then the question was, after the Churban took place, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, after the Jews were sent into exile, perhaps Butla Megillas Tainus, perhaps these holidays are no longer valid. And there is a dispute in the Gemara about it, whether these holidays still apply or these holidays didn't apply. On the days of these holidays, one is not allowed to fast. And some of these holidays, one is not allowed to give a eulogy. And the question is, do these holidays still apply or these holidays do not apply anymore? And there's a dispute in the Gemara. And the Gemara mentions two holidays that were enacted after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, so you see from here that these holidays still apply because it's not possible to imagine that the Chachamim, the sages, declared the previous holidays, the holidays that commemorate the events that took place before the destruction of the temple, before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. They declared those holidays invalid, and at the same time, they will enact new holidays. Now, the students of Rabbi Akiva, they died after the Churban, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, that's true. The Gemara says that according to the opinion, the holidays that existed beforehand, and that's how we paskin, with the exception of Chanukah and Purim, that those holidays are not valid anymore. Those two holidays were never instituted. The two holidays that took place after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So the question arises, how could we enact a holiday because the students of Rabbi Akiva, died. How can we enact the holiday because the students of Rabbi Akiva died? How could we enact the holiday because? Naftali, please. How can we enact the holiday because the students of Rabbi Akiva died? How can we enact the holiday?
If we don't.
It's not totally just okay. How can we enact the holiday because the students of Rabbi Akiva died when I better 1 second. Hold on. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Holiday because the students of Rabbi Akiva died when we're not allowed to enact new holidays after the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. It's interesting that when Yom HaAtzmaut was enacted as a holiday by the chief rabbinate of Israel, many of those that were opposed to the establishment of the state of Israel, so when they would write articles against the commemoration of Yom HaAtzmaut, the Israeli Independence Day, they would mention this Gemara. But the truth is, there was a custom in Europe. There was a custom in Europe there was a custom in Europe when there was a miracle and the Jewish people in Europe, each town needed its own miracles because there were constant threats of pogroms. So whenever there was a miracle in a town, each town made its own Purim. Besides the Purim that all of the Jewish people have, each town had its own Purim. So the argument, many argued that you were, because of this Gemara, that you weren't allowed to have your own Purim. And there was a dispute between the Maharam al-Ashker and the Pri Chadash. The Maharam al-Ashker said that you are allowed to have your own Purim, your own holiday. But the Pri Chadash disagreed with the Maharam al-Ashker, and he mentioned this Gemara. He says, after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, we're not allowed to create new holidays. So the Chassam Sofer, however, agreed with the Maharam al-Ashker. So the question is, why are we allowed to create new holidays? Well, and this was the question in regard to Yom HaAtzmaut also. And I think the answer is very simple. Now, if you take a look at the Rambam, I'm not aware that the Rambam says anywhere that you're not allowed to have new holidays. As a matter of fact, if you look in the letters of the Rambam writes that when he came to Erretz Yisrael, when he came to Erretz Yisrael from Morocco, I think it was, and Morocco at that time, there was a Muslim group that was fiercely anti-Semitic and would not allow the Jews to identify themselves as Jews. And it was very difficult to openly be committed to Torah and mitzvos. And the Rambam, the boat came to Akko, and he got off the boat in Akko. He declared it as a holiday for himself, for him, and all his future generations. So you see from the Rambam that the Rambam felt that you could have a holiday for future generations, even after commemorating an event after the Churban, after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So how are we to understand the Gemara's question? The Gemara's question it was that if they made the previous holidays invalid, they certainly would not have enacted new holidays. But I think the answer is very simple. The Chassam Sofer gives complicated answers, some very strange answers, but he says only holidays that are associated with Yerushalayim, with events that took place in Yerushalayim, you cannot have. But other holidays you could have. But I think that we could answer the question simply. The Gemara is not saying there was a prohibition to create new holidays, but requiring making a holiday requires a certain sense of happiness and joy. If there is no happiness and joy over the event, or the happiness and joy that you have from the event is somewhat very limited, then the holiday doesn't make sense to make a holiday. And that's what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is saying that after the Churban, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the Jewish people were so overcome with depression. So they were so overcome with depression that the holidays just didn't have much meaning for them. But with the passage of time, of course, we remember the Beis HaMikdash, and the Rambam tells us that the Gemara says it, that any generation that the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt so is a time of any generation the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt, it's as if it was destroyed. But nevertheless, with the passage of time, the impact is somewhat less. And we're not in a constant state of depression. We have days. We have Tisha B'Av, we have Shabbos B'Tammuz, we have Tzom Gedalia. We have days sometimes when there are decrees against the Jewish people. So we become in intensive depression from over the Churban. But in our day-to-day life, we do not have this sense of depression anymore. So it could be that everything is dependent upon the situation. And the fear that the Masorah would come to an end, and then the realization that the Masorah did not come to an end, was such a joyous occasion that in spite of the Churban, they felt that it's worthy of a holiday. And that's why they were able to make Lag BaOmer into a holiday. Especially in view of the fact that this holiday represents to a certain degree the frustration of the Romans. It's a negation of the Churban. And a holiday that commemorates a day that's a negation of the Churban is worthy of a holiday. Certainly the remembering the Churban saddens us, but it's that sadness that increases the joy when we see the frustration of the Romans to stop the Masorah of Klal Yisrael, to give the heritage of the Jewish people from being given over from generation to generation. Now, there is, and these were the reasons that were given for the holiday of Lag BaOmer, but in many communities, especially the Hasidic communities, as well as in the Sephardic communities, a different reason was mentioned for Lag BaOmer. And that is that this is the day, the Artsite of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, after Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students died, Rabbi Akiva did not give up teaching Torah. He didn't have any students left. So he went to the south of Eretz Yisrael, and he had 5 students, and each of these 5 students became outstanding leading teachers of the Jewish people. And the Masorah, the continuation of the Masorah, was through them. And one of them was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is the one who is identified as the author of the Zohar, and the custom developed to go to Meron, where Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is buried, on Lag BaOmer, and they make bonfires there. Now I see they try to imitate that custom everywhere else, and they sing and dance and everything. And the question, and they claim that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said that his Artsites should be a holiday. Now, the Chassam Sofer and the Soloveichik and the Yeshuas Yaakov and many of the Achronim objected to this type of celebration. The first thing they said was that on a Artsite, it does not seem that it's proper to celebrate as a joyous occasion. On the contrary, if anything, and if it is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Artsite, there is a dispute about that also, but if it is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Artsite, and you wanted to commemorate the Artsite of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, whenever it is, it should be commemorated with fasting, not with dancing. But in truth, it seems that, and while in the Gemara the Talmud identifies a person's Artsite as a day of fasting, Gemara Nedarim talks, if somebody says about a certain day that this day should be like the day of my father's Artsite, Yom Shemesh Beloved, so that day is a fast day, because there was a custom in the time of the Gemara, and in many communities that custom still exists. It does not exist in the Hasidic communities, but there was a custom to fast on the days of Artsites. But it seems that the Hasidic communities, they have this idea that according to Kabbalah, that on the day of the Artsite, the soul of the deceased goes to a higher place in the other world. And because of this, they feel that one could observe the Artsite as a holiday, not necessarily as a day of fasting. And perhaps this perspective came from the attitude regarding Reb Shimon Bar Yochai in Lag BaOmer. I think others say that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was actually looking forward. They bring some Kabbalah Sfarim that say that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, when he died, there was a smile on his face. It's like he was looking forward to the next world. It's very interesting. The Shloch, in explaining Yom HaKippurim, he says Yom HaKippurim, we're not allowed to engage. It's a fast day. We're not allowed to engage in physical pleasures. And he says, why is it? Because Yom HaKippurim is me'ein olam haba. In other words, it's a touch of the world to come. And the world to come is a total spiritual world. It's a world of the souls. There's no eating, there is no drinking in the world to come. It's just nehenem miziv hashchina. It's benefiting from being the closeness to God. And the question is asked, but Shabbos is also mein olam haba. Shabbos is a touch of the world to come also. And since Shabbos is a touch of the world to come, so why is it that Shabbos, on the contrary, it's a mitzvah to eat, it's a mitzvah to drink, there's a mitzvah of owning Shabbos? But the answer is, we Jews believe in two types of Olam Haba, two worlds to come. There is the Olam HaNeshamos, the spiritual world, where a person's soul goes after he dies. But then there is the Tchias HaMesim. We believe in the resurrection of a person, where the soul re-enters this world at the end of days. Yom Kippur is me'ein olam haba. It's a touch of the world to come, of the olam haneshamos, of the world of the souls. We rise above this physical world. Whereas Shabbos, on the contrary, Shabbos represents, in a sense, the sanctification of the mundane. Shabbos is the completion of creation of the physical world. It's the sanctification of the mundane. You have personalities, and both are very important. You have personalities that are Shabbos personalities. Personalities that are dedicated to the sanctification of the mundane. That say, yes, in this world, the presence of God is hidden. There's a curtain of nature that hides God. But it's our job to penetrate that curtain and to see the presence of the Shekhinah, the godly presence in this world. On the other hand, there is the Olam Haba of the Olam Neshamos, the world of the souls, which rises above this world. You have personalities that I think are Yom Kippur personalities. That in a sense, this world is holding them back. To a certain degree, it's almost like a prison for them. And to others, on the contrary, this world, we have a mission to sanctify the mundane. When you read the different Gemaras about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and when you read the different Gemaras about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, you get the impression that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai had that Yom Kippur personality. He's a person, when he would see somebody engaged in physical labor and not learning Torah, so he says they're putting aside the ultimate world for this world. Whereas the other Tanoim, Rabbi Shmuel, who, according to the Rambam in the Hagdama, was one of the teachers of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, even though his main teacher was Rabbi Akiva. So who saw the purpose of this world is sanctification of the mundane. So for Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, it could be, a person could suggest a soul on that level would, in a sense, is looking forward to have his soul join the source, its source. It's interesting, the Rashab, and in theory, the Lubavitcher philosophy in general is sanctification of the mundane. But Rashab mentions, but that could be based on moments, that Rosh Hashanah, what is the on Rosh Hashanah, when the shofar is blown, the shofar is the cry of the neshama, the soul of the neshama wanting to join its source. In other words, because I assume these 10 days that begin with Rosh Hashanah and conclude with Yom Kippurim is Dirshu Es Hashem Himaso. God comes close to us. So we're trying to feel close. We're trying to feel close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The soul wants to. What is the soul? According to most Mekubalim, the Rambam has a different opinion. But according to the Mekubalim, the soul is a chelik elokai mimal. It's the godliness in each individual. And when we see that closeness to God, the soul wants to join its source. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, he was on that level, perhaps more than anybody else in his generation. He rose above the physical world. And in a sense, to a certain degree, the world was almost like a prison for him. So he looked forward to entering into Gan Eden. This is one way that we could explain. However, I think another answer that is suggested is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Roman government, wanted, because Reb Shimon Bar Yochai remained adamant, and he spoke publicly against the Roman government. And when people would praise the Roman government, that they build marketplaces, that they build bridges, he would belittle their accomplishments And he would say anything they're doing, they're just doing for themselves. And the Roman government heard about that. And the Roman government wanted to put him to death. And for 12 years, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai had to live in a cave, hidden away. And the Gemara talks about the terrible conditions, physical conditions that he had to undergo in that cave. But for a person like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was not really part of this world, that was a small price to pay. On the contrary, he said he was happy with the time he spent in the cave because of the Torah he accomplished there. But ultimately, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai does leave the cave. According to Gemara, Eliyahu Hanavi told him to leave, but then he had trouble dealing with the outside world. He had to go back into the cave for another year. And ultimately, the death sentence that was handed down against Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was rescinded. So there are those that suggest the reason there is a celebration on his yahrzeit is because the attempts of Rome to kill him were frustrated. He died a natural death. He did not die like his teacher, Rabbi Akiva, who was tortured. And in a sense, that showed how the attempts of Rome were frustrated. So we are celebrating the frustration of Rome. And to me, it's somewhat difficult to accept that answer. I don't think that for generation after generation after generation, we would have a special holiday because the attempts of Rome against Reb Shimon Bar Yochai were frustrated. I mean, how many people? We have Hasara Hurugei Malchus. How many people were killed because they taught Torah B'Rabbim? And how many people were saved miraculously because of that? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was not the only one who there were decrees against. And you can be sure there were many great Tanoim and Amoraim who had decrees against them that for some reason those decrees were frustrated. So how are we to understand it? But I think, and then another question that's asked. There was a strange custom there in Meron that they would take expensive clothing and burn it. Very expensive clothes, burn them, destroy them when they would make this celebration. It would seem very odd. And the Soloveichik screams that it's Baltashches. You're not allowed to destroy something in a wasteful manner. It's a biblical prohibition. So how is it that they did such a thing? What would be the purpose of such a custom? And they said it's true, certain clothes of a king were burnt when he died. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was not a king, he was a leader. He was a teacher, but he was not a king. And then why such expensive clothes? Some years it appears that he stopped people from doing it, and so they would auction off the clothes and give the money to the poor, but many years it wasn't that way. And the question is, why was there such a custom? And I think it seems that initially the Romans, and my uncle mentions this, not in regard to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, initially they did not make many decrees against the practice of the religion after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. They felt that without the Beis HaMikdash, the Jewish people, the heritage of the Jewish people would come to an end in itself. But I think what the Romans were most concerned, and when they, later on, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, for many years, they were somewhat accommodating. Of course, there were Tanoim that they killed, but for the most part, Rome was not so scared of the Chachmei HaMasorah. They mainly Yavne b'Chachameha. They gave special permission to have a place for the future of Torah, Yavne. Rome was concerned about political leadership. And their feeling was that with the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and particularly with the destruction of the Kahuna, with the destruction of people who had official positions, the Jewish people, the Jewish heritage will be destroyed by itself. But what they noticed was that you can kill all the officers. You could kill those people who had official positions. But the Masorah will continue. The teachers, those who teach the people, will become not just the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people, but they will be the guides of the Jewish people. And Rabbi Akiva, and they thought by killing or with the death of Rabbi Akiva's students and the death of Rabbi Akiva, and certainly they thought that Jewish leadership is over. There'll be a couple rabbis. And Reb Shimon bar Yochai, living his normal life, that showed the perpetuation of Torah leadership. It wasn't Torah leadership. Rome understood leadership where the leader had an army. Rabbi Akiva was connected with Bar Kokhba. But Reb Shimon bar Yochai had no army. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was not even the Nasi. He had no official position. It's interesting, Reb Chaim, when he went to the Katowice conference, when he went to the Katowice conference to the founding of Agudas Yisrael, he, together with the Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, walked out of the conference. And the reason, many reasons are given, but one main reason given was he did not like the idea of the forming of a Moetzes Gedolei Torah. And two reasons are popularly said why he didn't like it. One reason he gave is, he says, electricity presented a problem. He said, till you had electricity, every house had its own candle. And if the candle went out in one house, the other houses had light also. He says, but when you have a power station, and there's a problem at the power station, all the houses are dark. And his feeling was to have in our time one central Torah authority. He wasn't talking about the Beis Din HaGadol. To have in our time one central halachic authority. If they make a mistake, it will lead all of Klal Yisrael astray. It has a lot of application to our day. And then another reason, he said, and I've seen this happen time and time again, if you're going to have one group who speak in the name of Torah for Klal Yisrael, ultimately the secretary will sign the names. His stamp will be the stamp of Doli Yisrael. And he might sometimes give over a different message. And we've seen that many, many times. Just recently I heard he was misinformed. He wasn't told the true facts. That proves Reb Chaim's point. And it's very interesting. My uncle said that it's very interesting. When Moshe did the avoda, the service in the Mishkan, before Aaron took over his position as Kohen Gadol. So in Moshe, the first 7 days Moshe did the service, Moshe just wore a white robe. Aaron wore the 8 clothes, the uniform, if I could use it, of the Kohen Gadol. Why is it? Because Aaron was, even though Aaron himself was certainly great, there's no question about it, but he was creating a position. His job represented a position. Position was necessary because the Jews, certainly after the Egel, needed that type of position. The position needed special clothes, a special uniform. When you have a special position, uniform comes with it. Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu because he was Moshe Rabbeinu. He did it as Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't need special clothes. Not that Aaron did, but Aaron was the first of the Kohanim Dolan. The Kohanim Dolan needed it. And I think that perhaps this is the reason why, in other words, what is the significance of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was a demonstration. That was the generation after Rabbi Akiva. That was a generation that you could show Torah leadership without a position. That was a demonstration that you didn't need the things that are necessary for a position. And in Errs Yisrael, you go today, you see that someone is elected Sephardic chief rabbi. So there's a whole set of clothes. Mayor Berlin, Bar Ilan, in his book, Me'Valozhin Ad Yerushalayim, he mentions, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, there were certain maskilim that when they became Rav at their town, he says they put on kapatas and everything. He said that actually had a certain effect on them, a positive effect. But in other words, it was the clothes, it wasn't the person. position requires special clothes. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai demonstrated that you don't need an army, you don't need position just by being a teacher, by teaching people. That's how the continuation of Torah takes effect. On one hand, the burning of the clothes, Melech represents Malchus, leadership. But on the other hand, the clothes that were burnt were not the clothes that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wore. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wasn't the king. He was a leader. He didn't need position to perpetuate Torah. We take the clothes, the expensive clothes, the clothes that are identified with leadership, with kingship, and we take them and throw them into the fire. In other words, this is the Jewish perspective of leadership versus the Roman perspective of leadership. The Roman perspective of leadership is position, armies, and all kinds of uniforms. The Torah perspective of leadership is learning Torah and teaching Torah. And if there's a lesson, if there's anything that we commemorate, what we commemorate is with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, that was a demonstration. His life was a demonstration that Jewish leadership will continue. He was able to frustrate the plans of the Romans, who thought that because the Jewish people didn't have official leaders with armies, that the Jewish nation will crumble. So Lag BaOmer is our way of celebrating the continuation of the Masorah and the continuation of Torah leadership. Okay.
Thank you. So anyone who has questions, please write them in the group chat. One question is, do Briskers fast on family Artsites or the Artsites of great teachers?
The Briskers fast on, assuming health-wise, they're able to, they fast on Artsites.
Another thing pointed out was, according to the book Mishnas Hasidim, the 5 Talmidim of Rabbi Kiva received smicha on Lag BaOmer.
Yeah, okay. I saw that also. And so that fits in with what I'm saying. On the contrary, it's the perpetuation. But that I think the Mishnah Hasidim, I don't remember which sefer's name I saw it in, but they say that Lag BaOmer was not the celebration of his yard site, but the celebration of his getting smicha. I saw that in one sefer, that it was a celebration of his getting smicha. But that also, it's the idea of because the Romans thought they will destroy Jewish leadership. Initially, when they realized that through the teachers of Torah, leadership continues, they tried to stop smicha. So it's the same idea. It's the Lag BaOmer is the celebration of the perpetuation of Jewish leadership, of Torah leadership.
Someone's saying, when's the earliest time you can get a haircut?
I think it depends on the state you're in.
I'm saying, assuming that there's barbershops open.
You can take a haircut. Certainly, to say mitzvah hayom kukulo, the way we pass. There is a machlokes, but the way the Mishnah Berurah paskins, and according to the way our custom is, you should take the haircut at least, I would say, after Shacharis on Lag BaOmer. So if you daven at nets, you can have an early haircut. If you daven basikin. The reason I say after Shachar is because it's based on Mitzvahs Hayom Kukula, and the custom that we have is when someone Chas v'Shalom is sitting Shiva, we wait till after davening and then he gets up. So not that one necessarily affects the other, but it will work on the same basis.
Svardim have to wait till the next day, right?
That's correct. Svardim wait till Amidala Bomer.
Never mind. Someone's saying that Rabbi Herschel Schechter allowed haircuts anytime because of Garbo Chaverov. I don't know if that was this year only he said that, but I'm not familiar with what he said about it.
The question is, that would be shaves. I don't know that a haircut is Garu Bo Chaverov. A shave would be Garu Bo Chaverov. But haircuts, unless someone has extremely long hair and generally doesn't, so then it wouldn't be Garu Bo Chaverov. My father and my uncle felt that was true about shaving. Certainly from my father, I never heard that about haircuts.
So during Sfiras HaOmer, he said that.
He said it during the 3 weeks. It obviously applies.
Okay.
It obviously applies to Sfiras HaOmer.
Okay. Now someone's saying the Beis Halevi compared fasting on a yahrzeit to before and after Matan Torah.
Which one is what?
Not sure. Yes. There's nothing else on here right now. I just want to mention to everyone, last week's share is on YouTube. So just search Rabbi Moshe Soloveichik and you'll find it on the YouTube channel.
Next week's just Yom Yerushalayim.
Next week, going to be the same time, same Zoom ID, and we'll be on the topic of Yom Yerushalayim. Some people are saying thank you very much. So
thank them.
Okay, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Rabbi, for the share. Everyone, so Garbo Chaverov is, someone's asking what's Garbo Chaverov. So
Garbo Chaverov means that his friends tell him that he's unkept, that he's letting his hair grow too long. So let's say by a parent, the halacha is, you see, my uncle and my father felt that the halachas of Avelus during the 3 weeks. I'm not talking about the week of Tisha B'Av, and I'm not even talking now about the 9 days. But during the 3 weeks, and during the as well as during the Sphira, is based on the Avelus of Shana of the year. Now, the law is that on a parent, you're not allowed to take your haircut, even though everybody thinks about 30 days. 30 days is not enough. In addition to the 30 days, you need Garu Bo Chavera. So during the matter of fact, there is a dispute between the Nesivus and Rabbi Kiva Eiger. Nesivus and his sitter, they're Chaim. So whether that's only the first haircut you take or every haircut you take during the year, you need someone to tell you need a haircut. So really, not taking a haircut is something that applies all year round for someone who's a novel on his parents. But once it's Garu Bo Chavera, people chastise him after the 30 days, so then he can take your haircut. So that's what Goru Bo Chavera. So they felt that the Avelis of the 3 weeks, and the Avelis after the 3 weeks, and the Avelis of the Avelis of Sphira is like the Avelis of a year. And by the Avelis of a year, if it's Goru Bo Chavera, so you can take a haircut. That's what it is. Okay, what else?
Okay. The Hasidim, I guess this is maybe the Beis Halevi, saying that the Hasidim not fasting for Yartzites were Misnagdim. It was like the difference in the Avelis between Moshe and Aaron. The differences before and after Matan Torah.
Was evil. I don't know. Where do you see about
I
Yartzeit?
still didn't understand that.
There's Yartzeit. There's that's they Vayifko so Kol B'nai Yisrael. That's by Aaron. By Moshe was just that they cried after him, but that was on that year, not every year. Actually, there is. It's interesting. It's brought down 2 approaches in the poskim on Zayin Adar, whether one should fast or one should celebrate. My father would say it depends. If you observe Zayin Adar as Moshe Rabbeinu's Yartzeit, so then you fast. But if you observe it as his birthday, so then you celebrate. That's how my father understood it.
Oh, to Misnagdish a joke. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Fine.
Okay. So thank everyone for participating. Everyone have a good week, and hope to see you next week.